Alexander Volkanovski beating Diego Lopez just defied every expectation, and there's already been dozens of videos mentioning every curse broken, how he beat Father Time, and there's also been people discounting Diego Lopez, but screw all that debate nonsense. I want to see if this is the single greatest achievement in UFC history, comparing everything from what Jones did, GSP, Silva, McGregor, everyone. And don't worry, there will be a little bit of glaze. I mean, it's Volk, come on. So just to set the parameters a bit, this will be on single fight achievements. So if Conor beating Aldo and Conor beating Eddie would be looked at as two different things. And hey, dickheads, if I don't get something right and I don't mention something from like 1990, like Gracie submitted Obama via flying omoplata, man, just hop off my dick, alright? It's a fucking YouTube video on a dead MMA channel. Instead of leaving a hate comment, go for a run or something, otherwise you'll look like my fat ass. So what did Volk actually do, putting all the glaze aside? Because when you look deeper into it, I'm not gonna lie, it's more impressive than you think in some ways and less impressive in other ways. I know, I mean, like we were saying, he's fighting the bloody Prime curse and the Drake curse at the same time. This has to be insane. So let's understand Diego Lopez first. Hit him with this fraud check real quick. So going into this, he had 5 fights from May 2023 to now, with the best performances being beating Ige on 2 hours notice and knocking out Brian Ortega like 10 times in a decision victory. And that's about it. Notice how I didn't mention Mozart because he's still in the apex. But between Ige saying he hits the hardest, Brian Ortega being able to do nothing, and him steamrolling everybody else, while being Alexa Grasso's jiu-jitsu coach, being Alexa Grasso's teammate, being Alexa Grasso's friend, I'm sorry. Diego Lopez by all means is legit, but he is not on the level of Ilya and Volk. That much was clear through the fight, but I do think he will get there. And as a professional fat-ass couch coach, I think Diego Lopez's problems are more of an experience and fight IQ thing than skills. That's also what Chael and Dustin said, and if you haven't realized, every MMA YouTuber just repackages their thoughts in a more complicated and dramatic format. So let's get back to doing that. It's pretty clear if this is the single greatest achievement in UFC history, it would be much more on the Volk side of things. And I think if you didn't know that going into this video, you're a dipshit. I'm sorry, I'm a dickhead. You're not a dipshit. So Volk going into this fight was 1-3 from the time of February 2023 to now, with the last 2 being knockouts, one by Islam and the second being by Ilya in May. And to be honest, I wouldn't have described him as chinny before that, but he's been dropped a few times in his career, and I'm sure being knocked out by those 2 of all people is definitely something that will mess with you both physically in terms of being able to take a shot, as well as mess with him mentally, which has been explained in depth by himself, everyone on this platform, and the UFC in every promo video. And you have to think, when you're getting older and it's these new guys knocking you out, the only conclusion you're going to come to is that your time is up and it's just a natural progression of things. And I think on that very same card, we saw that with Chandler and Pitbull. Patty's win over Chandler was super impressive, but Chandler looked like he didn't belong in there, and Pitbull looked like he forgot the fight was 3 rounds and was just a tad bit slower than Yair in every way. That's what Anthony Smith said. I think he looked just as fast, but no. I don't know. It's also important to mention the 2 other kings from his era, Usman and Izzy, are struggling like crazy at their age. Izzy put on a clinic until getting caught in a way he usually never does, and Usman, I have no clue what the hell is going on with Usman. I don't know if Usman knows what's going on with Usman, but Usman needs to fight again because Bilal is the champ. So it goes without saying that Volk being matched up with Diego, who's a power puncher, and him getting knocked out twice, leading to Volk putting on a 5-round decision victory, it's an S-tier achievement. But how does this stack up to the others? I mean, this is the whole UFC. Can this really compare to the achievements of Jones and GSP and everyone? And I think if you do take the whole career into account, it's still Jon Jones. So we are fudging the parameters a bit, although I do think this 1 title victory is worth the wait of 3. And remember, it's just a fun YouTube video. So we're gonna spit fire through all these achievements, but if you want Volk to win 100 title fights, leave a like, subscribe, or else Bilal is gonna come down and beat your favorite fighter. Y'all ready? We're gonna go through these fast because there's a lot of achievements and we're not gonna do all of them. We're just gonna do ones that cover all the bases. Jones versus DC. Although super impressive S-tier achievement, DC was 35 and Jones had all the physical advantages. GSP going up in weight to beat Bisping, and GSP was coming off a loss to Johnny Hendricks via split decision victory, and I think Volk being knocked out twice makes it more impressive, but this one I would imagine most people might think it's more impressive. Let's move on. Anderson Silva losing to Chael via 5th round triangle. Although Anderson lost his fight, it's still impressive to go all that time with the greatest of all time. Chill jokes in 2025 be like. Izzy knocking out Alex in the second fight, a bit of a wild one to put in there, but I think this mainly looks more impressive considering what Alex did after, and I think it's in contention, but it's not like Izzy got beat up in the last 2 fights before this. If you can't tell, the 2 losses are what's making this so impressive, but let's move on to more. Conor beating Aldo. Jose was undefeated for 10 years and got knocked out in 13 seconds. That is pretty wild. Conor going up to beat Eddie, who just beat RDA, and Eddie was a Bellator champ for a while. This is impressive, but I think we undermine this one just because of how many other 2-weight champions there's been since then. Jon coming back after 3 years off to finish Cyril in round 1. This is wild, but this is more Cyril bad, I feel, than Jon good. I'll get into this more later. Cody Garbrandt, 50-45, the bantamweight GOAT. Let's just move on. Leon head kicking Kamaru, who is probably going to enter the top 5 all-time discussion if he won this. This could be, but like, was it luck? Was it? I'm just saying, was it luck? Nunes knocking out Cyborg at 145 to become a 2-weight women world champion. Volk, I'm getting worried. Alexa Grasso submitting Valentina. 2 knockout losses. Two. He had 2 knockout losses. Poatan beating Izzy, the 2nd greatest middleweight of all time, and Volk, a bad stoppage. It was a bad stoppage. All right, I think we have enough that we can analyze, and before anyone's like, what about this, what about that, I'm sure whatever single fight you're thinking of, it's got to be super similar to at least one of those, or maybe they aren't. Who cares? So the big ones we need to break down are Conor, Poatan, Jones, and Nunes, and I feel comfortable that those 4 cover all the bases. So Conor Aldo was coming off Conor on a hot streak, and Aldo was quite literally seen as invincible. Conor was also coming off the Chad fight, which was his first fight that had him looking vulnerable, and it was thought that nobody was on Aldo's level in terms of striking, and Conor knocked him out literally in 1 punch. And this is literally a Marvel story in the making. I don't really know if there's a way to quantify how crazy this is, but this is the type of shit they wouldn't even put in anime. It's so wild. So we'll conclude on this later, but this is an insane achievement. Poatan coming in with no wrestling experience, flying up to fight Izzy. You could do this one or Yuri. Pretty similar arguments for both. Izzy has the legacy boost and Yuri has the weight boost, and I guess we can just do Yuri because Yuri was more likely to wrestle more and is heavier. I think what made this so insane is that it was a takedown sequence that led to the knockout, and it was close on the feet in the first fight, and most people didn't think Alex was gonna have a chance if Yuri decided to shoot, but as we've seen with the Ankalaev fight, Alex got some takedown defense that's a whole lot better than we thought. But that doesn't undermine the achievement. Alex, by all means, was supposed to immediately lose if he got taken down. So we'll jump back to this, but let's move on to Jon Cyril. And I think what really hurts this achievement is the fact that Cyril is ass. Like, he lost to Volkov. I don't care what the judges said. He is ass. And he looked like he didn't know what he was doing in there. And being so ass that you undermine Jon Jones' achievement is like... Bro, come on. Like, Jones was coming off 3 years, and you gotta be so dog shit that we are not shocked by it. Let's move on. Nunes knocking out Cyborg. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about Cyborg and what she was up to that much, besides being the women's GOAT before Nunes and dominating 145 in the UFC and after. But Nunes doing her like that was a total beatdown, and it did capture a 2nd belt. So that's gotta be competitive in this discussion. And I think I know how I feel about everything now. I think when you take historical context into account, there's a whole lot of moments and arguments that can be made for other people, depending on what you value more. I feel more than anything, fighters would choose Volk because as much as we can talk about it, none of us know what it's like to come off 2 knockouts and be back in a championship spot when you have that much against you. But here's what swings it for me, and there's one thing we haven't talked about. The actual fight itself. And maybe I should have thought about doing that earlier. First round, clinic, vintage Volk, which was exactly what I expected. Volk to dominate round 1 and then get knocked out in the 2nd. But the 2nd round comes vintage Volk again until Diego drops him at the end of the round. And Volk was pretty anxious in that corner, pretty upset he got dropped, and it looked like it was the beginning of the end. After that, round 3 was kind of pedestrian and in comparison, but a Volk round nonetheless. And I think everyone expected more from Diego, but that never came until round 4 when Diego literally put Volk's vision out. I don't know how Volk survived. He just kept on going in and out. He kept on entering and exiting. He would hit him with some good shit and get out of there, and Diego was like a shark in the water, and somehow he never found him. And then round 5, Diego was trying to edge him into a Max Justin shootout, and Volk just collected the round, staying on the outside, and it was a pretty easy decision. So honestly, he experienced adversity and came close to suffering the same fate as before, but overall for me, when you consider what Conor did, when you consider what Nunes did, what Poatan did, the only thing left to do is remind myself I am not an objective YouTuber and I have bias, so Volk is the GOAT because he's bald, short, and Australian. And if you want to waste more of your time, watch this video ranking all of Conor's fights, leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started, we're going to stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next one.